Hi, everyone. I'm Stephanie Selesnik, a board member from the Southwest chapter. And I live in Las Vegas, Nevada, where we are actually having weather under 100 degrees for the first time in forever. So we're pretty excited to have one day of coolness, relatively speaking. This is part of our chapter series of Meetup Mondays. We have once a month, we have education. Once a month, we have some really fun social stuff. So we'll tell you about that at the end of the next one, at the end of today's session. We want to really thank you on behalf of the programming committee and the board. We want to thank you for coming and attending, and we're really excited about our guest today. Our guest is Matthias Baur, and we call him Tezzy. He goes by Tezzy. He's the founder of the Exhibitions Think Tank, and this is a global professional guided discussion on the current COVID-19 effects on our industry and what we can do to improve it and develop new best practices. And we're going to be going through some of the process. There are about 130 plus global professionals involved in the first think tank. And it will be morphing into the Exhibitions Think Tank Club after this week. Myself and Erica Welling were participants in it, along with Lori Jenks. Yay, Strong Girls, that was the name of our team. And so we'll share a little bit about the process and what we learned along the way. Just as a reminder, we've got everybody on mute. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat and we'll be asking on your behalf. And again, the recording will be available afterwards, and make sure you fill out the survey when you get that too. And we've already been asked, the PowerPoints will be included, a link to the PowerPoints from our website. So with that, one last thing. The money, and if anybody else besides me donated, the money this month is going out to the Transgender Law Center, and the chapter has been funneling the money through any of the donations on our events so far to this really very fine group that helps younger people with issues in all that they do. So with that, let's go ahead and begin. And I'm going to turn it over to Tezzy.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Stephanie. So I'm sharing my screen now. Yeah, okay. Give me 1 second. So you should see my presentation now, and I make the presentation also bigger for you. Okay, hi everybody. My name is Matthias Baur. As Stephanie already said, I'm very happy to be here. As you can hear from my absolutely beautiful accent, I'm not American. I'm even not British. I'm from Germany, so the worst case, but I'm living in London at least. So, and this since 14 years. What I'm talking to you today a little bit is the exhibition think tank. But before I do that, only 1 second about myself and my career. As you can see, I started my career at Messe Frankfurt, then worked many years for Reed Exhibitions. That was also the reason why I moved to London. And then I worked a couple of years for UBM. I was actually the portfolio director heading up the food ingredients portfolio, which was based out of the Amsterdam office. And since around 5 years, I'm running my consulting company, the MBB Consulting Group. But today we want to talk about the exhibition think tank, which we have just finished this week with 150 people from all around the world discussing what do we need to do in the current corona crisis to change our industry and to make our industry future proof, and what actually needs to change. And during the process, people really appreciated working in their working groups, having the networking experience and being connected with people really from all around the world, people from the United States, from Europe, from England, from Germany, from France, from Italy, but also from India, from Hong Kong, and so on. So we decided to turn the exhibition think tank into the exhibition think tank club and continue doing think tanks, but also do smaller sessions. So for example, in July, we do 1 session about which skills do we need in our industry. Very interesting topic. But also we will have a hunt for finding the best hybrid event in the industry. So if you're interested to join the Exhibition Think Tank Club, the URL is on the website. If you have any questions, please ask me what the club is about. So how did we come up with the idea of doing an exhibition think tank to fight the crisis? First time we spoke about the idea around maybe 7 or 8 weeks ago. And at this time, my company released a crisis recovery guide. The crisis was relatively new. We all were heavily in organization of going into the crisis. And we released a guide about different things, what companies should do in the current crisis to go out of the crisis, hopefully stronger than they went into the crisis. And following this crisis recovery guide, we had more than 50 phone calls with exhibition teams around the world, from Australia to New York. And we all discussed things about sales, about repositioning our shows, about a post-crisis USP, about hybrid events, and about all these topics. And we all had one in common at these 50 calls, that we said, we as an industry, we need to bond, we need to come together to fight the crisis, and we really need to share our skills and our experience, because we have very skilled and we have very experienced people in the industry. So that was how the idea of the think tank was born, and we created this beautiful banner and grouped first 20 team leaders together. Stephanie was one of our team leader, and many other people joined as well. And together we formed the 20 groups with 100 people from all around the world to go through the structured process. And that was the process. We said we do the exhibition think tank in 4 sprints. In the first sprint and in every sprint, we are drilling one level deeper in our discussion. In the first sprint, we defined which areas need to change in the exhibition industry. Then in the second sprint, we defined what exactly in each area needs to change. In the third sprint, we discussed what does it mean for our customer. And in the last sprint, which we just finished last Thursday, we discussed how should we deliver that change. And at the moment, we are working on the final report. It is a beast. It will be 180 pages full of skills, insight, and expertise of the people who joined the think tank club, reflecting these 4 sprints. And then what we have done in each sprint, because that was not already complex enough, we made it a little bit more complicated. We said every sprint should have a certain structure really to ensure we get most out of the industry. So sprint 1 and 2, we prepared with surveys where we addressed the entire industry. Then we did a first session per sprint in which we presented the results of the survey and we gave the working tasks. Then the 20 working groups went into a working group phase in which they discovered and discussed the task. And then we had the second session per sprint where we announced the results and we gave the working task for the following sprint. And what was very important in this setup is that we have different universes of inspiration. In the first online survey, we addressed the entire industry. Then we came together, the 150 people in the think tank, discussing the results. Then we had a smaller group, the working groups, really working hard on the solutions. And then we released it back to the think tank. And now the report again will go to the industry. So we kind of get inspiration, knowledge, and expertise from very, very different levels. So the first sprint was about, as I said, which areas need to change. And to be honest, the result could have been, because COVID-19 is a health and safety crisis, that the result is health and safety need to change. It would be a very logical outcome, but the outcome was entirely different in this first sprint. The survey we did is, you can see here that we got feedback from all over the world. As our network is mainly in Europe, we had a hotspot, or we had a dominant feedback from Europe. But overall, we got feedback really from all continents. And we also got feedback from all different types of departments.
Tessie, I'm going to stop you right there. The first one, we tried to email things out, but unfortunately, if you go back to 8, you can see that there was a very, very small amount of participation from the US. Unfortunately, most of it was really Europe and then the UK. But in the subsequent survey, we brought it up to 8%. So we felt a little bit more representational in terms of that.
Yeah, that is
If I
very
could ask
true.
everybody to put themselves on mute, if you're not Tezzy, that would be really great. Thank you. Go ahead. Sorry, I had to interrupt on that.
No, that is absolutely true. In the first survey, we got the results mainly from Europe, and then we worked hard to get more results from US and also from Asia. So we improved a little bit in the second survey, but it was also a reflection on, we are based in London and our network is very, very strong in Europe. And the same, by the way, as a similar comment in the first survey, we were very, very strong on the C-level, on the director level. So we had 15% managing directors, 34% directors, and 23% C-level answering our survey. In the second survey, we got much stronger on the next generation. So we had then 15% of the people who are just starting their positions, which really brought a wave of new ideas into the think tank as well, which was great. But overall, a good representation of the industry and a good starting point for the working groups to really start their work. One question, we asked a couple of questions, and the final report will show all of them. But one question I want to point out here specifically, we are asked in the survey, how much do you think does the industry really need to change? And we had 6% completely, 44% a lot, and 45% somewhat, which is adding up to 95% of the people think that our industry need to change, which is an interesting result in its own right, because as I said, COVID-19 is a health and safety crisis, and we could have said, okay, let's wait until the crisis is over, which we did with SARS, which we did with Ebola, but in this crisis, because it was much more global, also the solution was much more complex than we have ever discussed in the years before. And this is the result, or the next two slides are actually the result of sprint number 1. And just to explain you a little bit, this slide is here, the blue bars is the amount of people who said, yes, this area need to change. So for example, here we have the value proposition, 91% of all people asked. This is a combined result of 2 surveys. So of survey number 1 and survey number 2 said the value proposition in our industry is an area that needs to change. And of these 91 people, they rated the change on a scale of 1 to 10 with very high, with 8.9. So then we had other areas which, for example, were stand type, sustainability, or insurance, where much less people said this is an area that needs to change. And that is represented by the green line, where we weighted the red line, the importance, with the amount of people and gave it the overall rating. So here you see all areas that need to change in the industry, and the green line is showing you the weighting of how much this area need to change. What we were also able to do as a result of sprint number 1 was that we could create main groups and subgroups. And overall, we identified 35 areas that need to change, and we divided them into around 8 main groups with many, many subgroups, and then we could weight every single area that needs to change. And this is the first result of the think tank that was really a surprise to me, and also throwing me away, is that we have a health and safety crisis, we have a health and safety issues, but the areas that need to change are spanning around our entire value proposition, our entire industry, and touch every single chain in the show creation process, from value proposition to setup, to digital, to commercial strategy, to human resources, to marketing. Many, many different areas need to change, and not only the show setup of what you might have expected at the beginning of the. So change needed, much more holistic.
Yeah. I think Tezzy, in terms of all the groups, so what we would do is we would meet individually with our groups, and then the group leaders would send in PowerPoints and Excel spreadsheets with different comments and things. And then the groups would meet again, either in the morning in London or in the afternoon. And so most of our group was in the afternoon because we were in the US. But part of the value proposition was, why do we even have shows? How are we taking care of all of our stakeholders? And a lot of groups really felt that the venues and everybody else in governments all working in concert together were really concentrating on health and safety and cleaning. And a lot of stuff was going to come down from the mountain to us to tell us what to do at our events. So that's why I think a number of groups decided to focus on other areas.
Absolutely right. And also what we could discover, that the groups are really interacting with each other. So the value proposition was one area where the think tank, the 150 people and the 20 working groups were very, very strong and said, this is an area that needs to change and we really need to work on as an industry. And that was very strongly connected then to another area, to commercial strategy. You see that pricing and commercial strategy are both rated very highly. And in the discussions, what you can't see here in the figures, people said, we get only the pricing right if we get the value proposition right. We get only the sales right if we get HR and if we get people right. So in the process, we saw a lot of interconnectivity between the areas, which again makes the areas of change a very, very holistic approach of what we need to work on as an industry. So that was result of sprint number 1. And then we moved into sprint number 2 and sprint number 3. And we combined both sprints in the group work. So when the groups like the Strong Girls or the other groups, Event Professionals Without Borders, moved into the next grouping work, they had to address 2 questions. And the question was, please describe what exactly needs to change in each identified areas, and please define the solution for the customer, visitor and exhibitor, or for the industry where a customer group like HR is not applicable. And here I show you one example. Oh no, first I show you how we moved into these areas. We also asked the groups, do you want to focus on a specific area? Because as I said, we identified 8 areas of change, and the working task for all groups to work on all 8 areas would be too much. So we asked the groups, do you want to focus on 1 or 2 specific areas? And here you see all the groups who said, yes, we want to focus on value proposition. And we did the same with digital. We did the same with HR, which resulted that 2 or 3 areas have not been covered. We were aware of that, but we want to give the groups a choice. And it also, you also can see by having 8 groups saying, yes, we want to really focus, in that case, on the setup of the show, how important this area was for the groups as an area that needs to change. And here I have an example slide from the working group, the Strong Girls. And Stephanie, do you want to talk for a minute?
Actually, I'm gonna let Lori co-present this one with me. So we had 6 women from the US and 1 from Australia. So we had a mix of show organizers and consultants and suppliers in our group. And we had one younger person, Katie Thompson, who's with Informa, who is a national, the Next Generation Leader winner, recipient last year from UFI. So we thought having somebody younger with the group, and I may as well mention that one of the best groups we thought in terms of presentations were the students out of Italy. They were amazing, you guys. These kids were amazing. You know, I think they've all grown up with PowerPoint, so they put everybody else to shame. They even had a video. It was, yeah, we were put to shame. So basically our whole thing was reimagining registration, because how many of us really ever fill out the whole thing? No one, right, Lori?
Right.
Nobody does.
That's exactly true. Yes.
So we thought that registration should really focus on how do we sell connections with people instead of selling square feet. So you want to talk a little bit about this real quick?
Yeah, and really it's utilizing smart technology and really capturing the behaviors versus really, you know, and for us, you know, the old school way for, you know, US, and I'm speaking more for US trade shows, was, you know, you ask, some groups ask like 50 to so many questions, and what do they really do with that data? And so for us, there was some of our group really feel like you can completely get away from questions and not ask any demographic questions, and really just go in and grab people through their LinkedIn, through any of their social media profiles, and then start connecting them. And so we feel that it's definitely going to be evolving. And I think now that even more so, where people are accustomed to virtual and technology now and forced into it altogether, there are great things that can come about out of this. So matchmaking is really the key to getting us into our new vision for a trade show or an event, a live event. So Stephanie, you want to pick it up from there?
So interestingly enough, quite a few groups looked at matchmaking as one of the main ways to really increase why do we have trade shows. Now, we all know everybody goes to trade shows. The number one reason from SEER is to see what's new. Second is networking, right? So matchmaking as part of that process, a much more formalized matchmaking process, I think is what we're going to see going forward, where you can have the hosted buyer or the serendipity, as well as the serendipity of people walking down the aisle. It's just a matter of how do we put people together, either visitors and visitors together, exhibitors to visitors, sponsors to visitors, and vice versa. So that was essentially, that was one of the deep thoughts, and that was actually several hours of conversation, believe it or not, folks. Just to get to this one slide.
Well, and we're all type A. We're all type A personalities. In the US, we call them type A's. But yes, and it is important that, but it's a blending of that virtual and then the human touch, okay? Because face-to-face is so critical. So that's what we were focused on, really how to blend that and how to build that new hybrid model.
And this slide is also what Stephanie said at the beginning. I think this is really representing what the interesting outcome of this overall process was. We put 150 people together who most of them never talked to each other beforehand. We had students from Milan, we had show organizers from America, we had association directors from Hong Kong, we had agency people from India. So we all looked at the changes in our industry from so many different angles, but we were largely aligned in the message of what needs to change. And that was indeed a crowd intelligence communication process that never happened before in the industry beforehand. And it was a big experiment. But the content you can see on that slide that came out of it was very deep, and the report, the 180 pages, once we have released it by the end of this week, it will go in massive detail of what all these group had to say. So we put all this in the report of that, and that slide is a taster of what the report will come. So then we went into sprint number 4, and in sprint number 4, the think tank was going on already for 6 weeks. Groups worked very hard, people worked very hard. And in that sprint, we said it's an enormously important question. How can we make sure we don't fall back into old habits? And how can we make sure change is actually happening? But we said we leave it to an open discussion in the group, and the group should submit a PowerPoint slide of how we really can make sure that change is happening, because we have identified it as necessary to be happen. And here we have first we gave some inspiration of how we trigger change, and I gave 2 examples of workshops we run from MB Consulting, how we trigger change. And one methodology is simply involving your customer in a change process. So saying you have a strategy cycle and the exhibitor has something to say in your strategy cycle. So you don't create the strategy on your own anymore. You involve your visitors, you involve your exhibitors in your strategy creation process, and you do that at a very specific point. And I gave the example of saying I had a show, and that show we were consulting was in really heavy waters. Actually, the exhibitors wanted to let the show die, to be very honest. The exhibitor called the show organizer and said, we want, the show is dying, we don't want you to organize the show anymore. And then we did this change management methodology where we say, exhibitor, you have now a say in the show concept, and specifically when it comes to content and features. And we gave this example where we said the entrance of a show very often is a boring area. Yeah, queuing up to get your lanyard is not the most exciting thing you have done in your life. And it's also very often a very negative half an hour. And this is where our target group, the visitors, are starting their day into the show with a negative and with a boring experience. So let's make the boring experience a positive experience, and let's move the innovation zone into the entrance, like at a modern airport setup, where the entrance is a duty-free shop. At our next trade show, the entrance will be an innovation zone, and we gave 3 different examples how this innovation zone could look like. And then we said to our advisory board, and we said to our feedback group where our exhibitors and visitors were organized, and you now can decide how this innovation entrance should look like in the future. You have 2 results. First of all, an exhibition who just called you and said, I want that your show is dying. I don't want you to organize the show anymore, has constructive thoughts about your show and becomes a partner again. And the second thing is you enhance the show, you make your show better, and the show becomes a baby of the exhibitor again. So the exhibitor is identifying itself as a show. So it's a big piece of change management. And with this example, we asked the groups to go into their group phase and to think about what could they think about. We make sure that change is happening. And here we come up with an example slide from Event Profs Without Borders. And I think, Erica, you want to talk about this a little bit.
Sure. So as Tessie said, there were 20 groups and we all gave our feedback on every sprint, but because Strong Girls is represented here and now I'm part of a different group called Event Professionals Without Borders, we're just giving you an example of some of the things that we came up with various sprints based on our expertise and the topics that the group wanted to handle. So Event Professionals Without Borders, the reason we came up with that cute little name is because we had, I mean, literally almost every person in the group was from a different country, from Ireland and Switzerland and Canada. There were 2 of us from the United States, UK and such, and all from, you know, owners of their own companies and consulting groups or digital registration to exhibitor sales. And it was a really fun group, a lot of experience in this group, in this particular group. And one of the themes that we had throughout in our conversations with this group and then entered into Sprint 4, and of course, we all want to have change in the industry. We all feel that there should be a return on investment in the industry and that the industry should no longer go forward without keeping all stakeholders in mind. So that means really partnering with exhibitors, vendors, sponsors, and show organizers. And so we felt that, you know, we wanted this to be a good change going forward, a positive going forward. And therefore, you know, one of the statements that we came up with is, don't look back, you're not going that way. And how do you have this be a habit that in our future doesn't change, that there is really truly return on investment for all. And part of that is just really integrating and really paying attention and listening to all stakeholders. So going into this, we said, first we need to really, you know, those organizations that and exhibitions and conferences that are successful are the ones that have steering groups and advisory boards, not only just from the visitor and attendee or exhibitors are the typical, but also from the visitor standpoint. And really get a good take on what's happening and keeping a finger on the pulse going forward, which then goes into setting the goals that you're going to have for that particular conference and event. And of course, we've all agreed that no longer is it really going to be relevant for one event. There's got to be touch points throughout the year. And whatever those touch points may be for that individual exhibition or event, it could be multiple little live events along with some online digital events, and obviously during some of these live events having a combination of both a hybrid for those that couldn't attend as well as those attendees that are there. But really you need to set the goal first, understand what is going to work for your specific event. And we felt that this goes into then a checklist, kind of like a toolkit, to really make sure that you're paying attention to the process and how that feels and is going to relate back to the goals that were set, and the surveys ahead of time. And of course, in the very end is making sure that we're evaluating all along the way to make sure that we have those checkpoints. And, you know, when we go back into this toolkit idea, drilling down into the details, like what is going to work for registration, like the Strong Girls team started drilling down into that, and what is going to work for show site presence, similar to some of the things that we see on Apex for the EIC Council when they go into a checklist for the right way to do a site visit, depending on if it's this particular group or at a hotel or a large facility. And so really having that toolkit there as a reminder, you can use a large portion of it or drill it down to more a lighter kind of show or event that you might be handling, but having something that's a little comprehensive for all. And that was what we really wanted to focus on, that value proposition in our group.
Yeah, I think part of what we're doing here, and why we thought that this would be a good thing to share with the rest of the chapter and all of you here, is that this could be something that you can take back to your teams or even with a group of friends and really rethink, how can we do this? And especially if you're working on second and third tier shows, this is a chance to really shake things up in a very meaningful way, because you know you're not going to have as many exhibitors and visitors. None of us are for a while. And so this is a chance to really experiment and really get into the heads of those attendees and exhibitors in a way that perhaps you never have before. And this whole change management that Tezzy spearheaded and shepherded, and browbeating, but shepherded us through, was really a pretty fascinating look at taking a minute to breathe during this pause and figure stuff out in a different way instead of putting out fires all the time. It's really a chance to go back, step back and be strategic, and then turn that strategy into tactical, like Erica said, with the setting of goals for changes and having those signposts and having real clear ways of how we're going to do it and the methodology.
And then to add to that, you know, there were some really great ideas in specifics that came out from this group, including from the young professionals that we mentioned, that Stephanie mentioned before. Some incredible ideas from them, kind of like, you know, the other word that comes to mind that came out of this group that I had never heard before, but Stephanie has, was reverse mentorship. And I think that there needs to be much more of that, and to really hone in, drill down into these great ideas and methodology like Tessie has done with this think tank to help us focus in on those ideas.
And I have to say something too, because I think the international component of it, what Tessie brought to us, because we're very isolated in our US bubble, right? For us, for the US side. And I think everybody is in their own little bubble. And I think what Tessie did so well was just to curate a group of professionals, and no matter where you were based, your passion was events and exhibitions. And if you had that common denominator, that was what brought you together to the table. And I loved that. I loved the collaboration, and we're even expanding that more in the club, which I'm really looking forward to, because, you know, we got to see their thought processes through a different lens, which was so eye-opening for me, and just the way that I've done business and looked at it and approached it. So it was really, really refreshing. And it was really, to me, opened up the doors of true solid communication. And thank you, Tessie, because that was really, that's very hard for us to do. And to get this, to turn something of a pandemic and a crisis into something positive by just talking through it was very, very good for all of us, I think. So that was just a little couple 2 cents from your strong girls.
For me, it was a great experiment. And as I said to you at the beginning, this is the biggest experiment. And never in the industry a crowd intelligence communication process in that sort has happened. But also for me, it was really having people from all around the world together. Very often it helps when you have your problem, you're sitting in America, you have your problem, and then suddenly you talk to somebody in Italy, you never saw this person, spoke the person, or even know the person exists. but you have this conversation that, you know what, I have exactly the same problem. And then you can talk openly about it. And that helps for inspiration. And that slide, again, what Erica just presented, it shows we have of these slides, we have more than 14 slides in the presentation, only on the topic change management. And how we build the report is, I think that might be on my next slide. Ah, no, the next slide is again a strong girl slide, but then we come to the conclusion. Stephanie, do you want to talk about this slide a little bit? Or Lori?
I can.
Lori's got
so
this down.
this is my big passion. So what we all love to do is really stage live events, and this is a way to reimagine that and really take it up. And we titled everything 2.0, so it's our next chapter. Here's what we want to do. So really, you're taking your traditional show, which everybody knows, or exhibition, and you're remodeling it and you're re-envisioning it. And that's where we're taking it. It's all about community. It's all about connection. And it's all about really putting people together, and we are facilitating those relationships. And what is really hard to build virtually is trust. Right now, trust is lacking throughout a lot of different areas in our business. So where can you build that is on the show floor, and taking these new networking opportunities that are really sold by time slot, not by the foot, not by net square footage, and not that's a whole different model. And I think these are all new ideas that are easily to be, you can monetize them. So we were so passionate about this, and we envision this whole floor really having these cool areas of connection, just done differently. And then you take it, and it's almost like a studio. If we took it and we sat there and said, we're going to create a studio, and then we're going to push it out, and we're going to virtually take our content and turn it into 365 days a year to keep your community engaged. So this is what we see, and this is what we were so excited about. And I think that's what came out of just talking and collaborating with all of our other, ETT, and that's our acronym for it. Everything has an acronym, ETT, and our other teammates. And this is just really, really fun. So I have to say, this is our vision, and I just feel like we're not going to look back. There are great things that are traditional about trade shows and exhibitions. There are great things. We're not going to get rid of those, but there's a lot of change that can happen, positive change, and we just see it coming, and we know that it can be really much more high touch, much more personal, customized, curated, and really about, people. What's our, Stephanie, what's our four? Okay. You know what it is.
Well,
people, companies, products, and content. That's it. Yeah. That's it. Yeah. That's our world right there. So that was our slide.
Yeah. Our main premise, and a lot of other groups echoed the fact that we need to move into selling connections and not square feet.
Right.
Yeah. Very true.
And that was something that came out from a lot of places. Now, is that going to change overnight? No, but are there a lot of different areas where you can take change? Yes. And this is something that you, again, can do with other colleagues or your shows,
right,
or your companies, to really start changing things up and taking advantage of not doing the same old thing every day.
Again. And I think we also all agreed at the end of sprint number 4 that if there's always a good thing in a bad thing. And if there is a chance in the crisis, then it's really taking the change serious and pushing our value proposition, pushing our product, pushing trade shows to the next level. And this is actually, that is a slide out of the end report. So this is a little bit a summary. You see here a lot of quotes people made during the think tank, and major areas to change are really, or some of the major areas where value proposition, to take it very, very serious with a big chance to widen the value proposition. I think somebody said we need to change our language. We should not talk about us as show organizers anymore. We should talk about us as business inspiration, the business inspiration industry. So that is a chance. The other thing is that the pricing needs to reflect the ROI and the value proposition, that people pay for square meters, but do you want a square meter when you come to a show? No, you want to have a lead when you come to the show. So we need to have more value-driven pricing systems and supporting people, not only to execute the next show, also supporting people. We as an industry, we need to look after our own people, which has a lot to do with valuing and training up our people, because more diversity makes us stronger to go through the next crisis. And the next crisis will for sure come. And finally, hybrid events. So these were 4 of some major topics that have been discussed in quite a depth. And before I finish the presentation, very quickly, my 5-second self-promotion. So we are a consulting company. We consult quite a lot of companies in the USA, by the way. We are having a project with Informa at the moment in the USA and consulted a couple of companies in your country as well. So if you need any help in strategy, business recovery, sales, M&A, due diligence, or digital, please ask us. And that is it from my side.
So I've got a couple of questions, and I'm going to go ahead and ask Erica and Lori and Tezzy. I'm going to go ahead and ask each of you the same question, which is, what was the most surprising thing to you that came out of being part of this process? Just, it could be anything from the people to the things that came out of the ideas to anything, or actually, wow, this actually came off. In your case, Tezzy.
In my case, I hear many people saying that Corona crisis is like a spyglass on the problems we have since 10 years. So we talk since 10 or since 20 years, we talk that our industry is behind in digital. I know for a long time that we talk that we need to look after our people. I know for a very long time that we need to attract the next generation. Erica, you said the young Italian group, they gave so much inspiration to the think tank. They gave so much wisdom and so much knowledge with their young age to the age group. But we talk about this since 20 years, that we need to attract the next generation into our industry. And the biggest surprise was that identifying 35 areas that need to change must mean we have not addressed some of the problems in the past as well as we should have addressed them. And that 150 people who don't know each other, who partly never spoke to each other, every single of the 150 people would agree on that these 35 areas we have identified, and out of these 35 areas, 8 urgently needs change. That is a big surprise, but that is also a big mission our industry is on, because I remember a discussion we had at a conference in Ufi, and we discussed, can our industry be Überreist? Can our industry be disrupted? And we all said, no, our industry can't be Überreist because nobody can organize trade shows. Now we have a time, Alibaba is suddenly starting to experiment with events. LinkedIn is suddenly starting to experiment with events. I remember a conversation I had with a senior LinkedIn guy who said, we know we could be in events. We are not in events because the industry is too small for us. What would happen if LinkedIn is changing their mind on the event industry? Do they have enough digital people? Do they have more digital people? Do they have more development power? Do they have more money to experiment? Yes to all these questions. So we need to get on our feet and we need to change our industry, and that we are aligned across the world. That was the biggest surprise for me.
Yeah, I'm putting in on the LinkedIn, in the chat. Bloomberg just did a really interesting article on the virtual fair from the world's largest trade show, which is the Canton Fair. And they did it all online. Some was good, some was not. but it's worth a read if you're, if you want to see what the real impact is in terms of what the online presence and show is at the moment. So the good news for all of us is that people still feel that face-to-face is really important. The bad news is that I think the days of the really huge booths and the little small booths are probably on their way out, and we're going to see a much more egalitarian show floor where the products actually are the ones that shine. Erica, what did you think about, what was your biggest learning?
I'm going to let Lori go first because like Zoom problems are, I have the lawn guys behind me and I think that they're almost done, but they're noisy. So you go first.
Okay, I don't have the lawn guys behind me. So, you know what I thought was really fascinating was the commonality of our issues. It doesn't matter where you are. There was a lot of synergies and a lot of, the same, when we really took it apart, and it was based on the data. And Tessie, you touch on those surveys, but those surveys are really, really important because we're working off of data, and data is so critical to us. And once you have that input, even if it's partial, even if it's not really truly like US was underrepresented, but you could still see a lot of the same, issues, the same complaints from exhibitors to high of costs. And, this is something that we just need to address head on. And I think that's what everybody was in it, and they were in it to win it. Everybody, and Tessie sort of ran this like a contest. And, Tessie, once again, when you pit people against each other and teams against each other, and we have to be creative. And that's how we had to come up with our names. You gave us an identity. You gave us like that way to bring us together, not only in our individual teams, but then also collectively, as we all are underneath the ETT. And I thought that was really brilliant. And I think everybody was just, and it was interesting just on my LinkedIn, how many people reached out to connect with me. And, just from us talking when we have, we'd have weekly meetings, and it was really fast paced. What I liked about it too, was it was fast paced. It was, let's go, let's come up with these ideas. You talk and you present. And I think that kept us focused, didn't let us get distracted or fall behind. And I think that's that's probably the best thing I got out of it, is really the sense of community. I have a much larger colleague pool now, I'm very grateful for, and I'm a member of the ETT club. I'm going to be, and I'm, communicating that out too, because I think we need that larger community now. So is your lawn guy done now? Erica?
Yes.
Are you ready?
Right.
Okay, good job. All right, you're on.
But I'm clapping for you because that's true. I mean, number one, I thought that the way that Tessie did this, and of course he's done this many times with multiple organizations where he's had teams all around the world, and it showed because you're shining a light on all these specific topics to help really dive deep. And you think that they're kind of simplistic at start, but we really dove deep into each one. And even though we didn't have, the polls went out to all the, all kinds of individuals in our industry, and it was really interesting to see the feedback. But one of the there was a common thread that even though a lot of it was international, when I hear the conversations that go on the committees and the boards that I'm here in the United States, it's a very common conversation. And there's all kinds of different polls that are going on with different associations that are asking different questions that are overlapping. One is that, our poll was more of, when live events happen, what are we going to see? And, and other polls you'll see is that people are really dying to get back into the live event. However, we all realize as an industry that this is going to change us for a good reason going forward. And that is the value proposition. That was the thing that I remember in all the organizations that I'm involved in, we've always pushed for show organizers to extend their events smartly by having that combined digital presence where you're having touch points and reaching out to your exhibitors both personally and digitally all along throughout the year, instead of just all of a sudden, okay, well, give me your check to be an exhibitor and be an attendee and then go on your way. And not very many people have, well, there were some that followed, and got smart in it, but everybody is getting smart in it now. And things are changing so quickly. Like Zoom is even changing their platform as quickly as they can, as they're seeing the changes that need to have happened. So this group was kind of, it was fun because we're all from different places. Some of us are in the same associations worldwide, like UFI and IAEE, and yet we got together and it was a fabulous experience, and I'm going to continue to the ETT Club.
Yeah, so yeah, we've mentioned it a few times, and if it sounds like we're doing an ad, we're really not. It's just we found really good value. I think especially because, you know, Vegas here, we're opening up, but we're on a pause because, as everybody knows, our rates went up considerably in the last 3 weeks since the casinos opened. However, we all maintain a, you know, hopefulness, but, you know, how many people are really ready to get back on a plane? I mean, I know I am, and I know a few other people are, but a lot of people are really concerned, and they're going to be concerned for a long time. So again, you know, where we're used to everybody flying in all the time and coming to our events, maybe not. So for me, I think in terms of the think tank, I did know a lot of the international folks because I travel, but I think seeing the commonality around the world, that we just have to be better at what we do, and we have to kill the sacred cows. And again, I think that the large shows are going to continue to do well, and they're not going to change a whole lot. But the smaller shows and the newer shows and the shows that were already in trouble ahead of time, before this even happened, really need to take a hard look on what are they delivering to the people. If you've got an association and you're working for an association that has a small show, and it's more about putting the right people on the board that always support whatever you are, you're doing it wrong. You want the naysayers. You want the people who are still passionate about it. And you also want to talk to those people who left because they didn't find value, and really ask all those hard questions. And it's the same thing with your shows. You know, don't be afraid to put a group together of, well, we loved your show, but then it changed, or we changed, or the industry changed, whatever, and they no longer come. I think those are some, you know, different ideas we can take away from it. Yes, Tezzy.
Sorry, say it again.
You were nodding along with me. Like, what? Yeah.
No, sorry.
All right. Well, I don't see any questions here. Does anybody have any questions? If you want to,
you want to open up the mic, Tessie. You have control of you're the host. If you want to unmute everybody.
Oh.
Or re-host to me and on.
Technology again.
Technology again. Exactly. 1 second. I re-host to you, so you should be the host now.
Okay.
Yep.
Hold on. I'll unmute for those people that want to chat, because our last meeting and by the way, while I'm doing this, if you want to talk about our upcoming meeting, Stephanie,
yes. It just disappeared. Give me 1 second here. Here we go. We love when those things. So on July 13th, we're going in a completely different direction. We are going to have a Melody and Whiskey Monday Melody and Whiskey. It's going to be at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. We're going to have the foremost whiskey sommelier, whiskey connoisseur, chat with us about whiskeys. You're going to be able to buy them ahead of time in small bottles to go along with us. And we're also going to have some entertainment. So it's going to be a completely different kind of event. It's not going to be so cerebral, we promise.
Well, Tessie, what time is it there? It's 9 o'clock there. So if it's 4 o'clock,
it's 9 o'clock. Yeah. Normally I would be in a pub by now, but they're all closed still in London.
Yeah, and oh, they still are, huh? I've been seeing friends that are from the UK counting down the days until their pubs open again.
It's on the 4th in 4 days.
It's a good day for it.
Wow.
Yeah. So anyway, mark your calendars for the 13th, because we think it's going to be a really fun, different kind of event. If you don't know anything about whiskeys, you'll be able to get them in the smaller bottles, so you don't have to buy 5 huge bottles. The other good thing is, because most people are still working from home, you don't have to worry about driving.
And here's the other really cool thing. The artist that we have that's going to be joining us, the song artist, is phenomenal. He's well-renowned in both the United States and Australia. So we're going to be interlooping his music, and he'll have a few words as well, along with, like Stephanie said, the #1 whiskey connoisseur in the world. And we'll make it so that the whiskeys you can get are readily available, but it'll be a good learning experience for those people who have never really ventured out to taste whiskeys.
Very good. And then, you know what, Stephanie, can you throw up on the chat the exhibition think tank website, just for people to go back in and they can sort of look at that if they have more questions. But we're always here to answer if you guys need any feedback or anything about this, because I think it's super important. The more data, and just like you said, Tessie, thought, really concentrated thought around where we should go and what we should do as a industry, I think is always helpful and beneficial. And I think what's really going to be great about ETT is it's going to be evolving, and it's going to be, and the membership is growing from, you know, just how many people were in our the original ETT?
In the original, we had 150 people, and we started the ETT club since around 10 days now, and we have now around 150 people in the ETT club as well. So we will pass the 200 people very soon. And what we will do on the website as well is we do a lot of networking functionalities. We just switched the member list online today. And then we will make sure that there's a lot of intergroup activity as well, alongside with the future think tanks and the future sprints we are organizing. Right. So everybody who wants to join the ETT club, more than welcome. And
yeah, I just had a question on how to join. If you go to the website, I put down the exhibitions think tank. It will. Is that the? That's the.
It's exactly, yeah. You go on the website. There's a button, become a member. There's a free membership, and there is also a gold membership for £11.50 per month. But yeah, you can join however you want. So everybody's welcome to join.
And you have a session coming up, don't you, Tessie, with Joanne? I think I saw something, because that would be good too. So maybe Stephanie can throw that up too, because
I don't know about that one.
I just saw it on LinkedIn.
It's on the website. There is a link events, and we have in July, we have actually 3 events. The one is opinionated about digital, and we have 3 people discussing the topic if virtual events can replace live events. Then we have a session opinionated about skills, and there we have 4 people talking about if we are missing skills in the industry, and we have a sprint where we give the goal to the participating group that they need to hunt for the best hybrid event we have at the moment, and that hopefully we get some best practice cases back to the industry.
All right. Well, that's bringing it to the end of the hour. We want to thank all of you for participating. When you get the survey this afternoon, please fill it out. It's only 3 questions. We make it really simple. If you have any ideas, you can contact any of us on the board for new things, for new ideas, new programming. We really want to thank Tessie for staying awake and joining us this evening, this time.
Thank you, Tessie.
Thank you. And again, thanks to the whole program committee. Thanks especially to Paul and Landon, Paul Trainer and Landon Shores.
This is recorded on our website too.
Yeah, this will be up on our website as well. But we want to thank the whole team for putting it together and publicizing it. And if you want to get involved with anything with the chapter, shoot somebody a note and we will get back to you. And again, we really appreciate it. Thank you again, Tessie and Erica and Lori.
Thank you. Thank you, Stephanie.
We'll see you on the 13th for some whiskey and music.
All right.
Yay. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.